stood at the back of the massive classroom, her eyes fixed on the holographic display floating above Master Instructor's desk. The display showed hundreds of different alien species, each demonstrating their preferred combat style. Some used claws, some used energy weapons, some fought with blades, but none of them used two weapons at the same time in the way she had seen in old Earth videos. The classroom itself was enormous, built to accommodate species of vastly different sizes. Sat in a section designed for medium-sized bipeds, surrounded by other cadets from across the galaxy. To her left sat a Thane named, his scaled green skin reflecting the blue light from the hologram. To her right was another human from the same transport ship that had brought Earth's first group of cadets to the Galactic Combat Academy. Master raised one of his four arms and the classroom fell silent. He was a species that had been studying combat for longer than humans had existed. His skin was gray and rough like stone, and his four eyes could look in different directions at once. When he spoke, his voice was deep and carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Today we discuss a fundamental truth of combat biology," began. "A truth that has been tested across 10,000 years and observed in every species we have ever encountered." He tapped a control panel, and the hologram changed. Now it showed a complex diagram of neural pathways and brain structures. "No species in the known galaxy can truly dual-wield weapons," he said. The words hung in the air like a verdict. "Many have tried, all have failed. Do you know why?" A cadet from the species raised one of her 6 limbs. "Because it requires the brain to process 2 completely different combat sequences at the same time." "Correct," said, nodding with 2 of his heads. "Every species, regardless of how many limbs they possess, has a unified combat consciousness. When we fight, our brain coordinates all our movements as a single unified pattern. Even my species, with 4 arms, moves them in synchronized combinations. We do not think of each arm separately." He brought up another display, this one showing failed attempts at dual wielding from various species throughout history. Watched as a 4-armed alien tried to use 2 swords independently. The movements looked clumsy and uncoordinated. The alien kept hitting its own weapons together or leaving itself completely exposed to attacks. "The biological reason is simple," continued. "True dual wielding requires the brain's hemispheres to operate independently while still working toward a common goal. This creates a processing paradox. The left hand must defend while the right hand attacks, but both must also be ready to switch roles instantly. The combat decisions must be made simultaneously but independently. No evolved species has developed this capability, because it provides no evolutionary advantage over synchronized fighting." The Thane leaned back in his seat with a smug expression. "My species tried for generations," he said loudly. "Our warriors trained from childhood. The best of us could hold 2 weapons, but they always moved together. One would lead, the other would follow. Never independent, it cannot be done." Gestured with approval. "Exactly. The Thane military spent 2 centuries attempting to develop dual-wielding techniques. They failed. They attempted it, they failed. Even ancient species whose names are now lost to time attempted it. All failed. This is not a matter of training or technique. It is a matter of fundamental neurology." Felt a strange feeling in her chest. She wanted to raise her hand, to say something, but she held back. She was new here. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 5 years. Humans were still proving themselves worthy of a place in the academy. Speaking up against a master instructor on her 2nd week would be foolish. But she kept thinking about her childhood. Her family had practiced traditional Korean martial arts for generations. Her grandfather had taught her father had taught her older brother, and they had both taught her. She remembered being 12 years old, holding 2 practice swords made of wood, moving them in patterns that felt as natural as breathing. Her left hand had blocked her brother's strike while her right hand had countered. She had not thought about it. It had just happened. Her instructors back on Earth had noticed. They had said she was unusual, that most students struggled to use both hands independently, but they had assumed it was just talent or practice. No one had ever suggested it might be something special about being human. The lesson continued, showed more examples, more proof. He demonstrated with his own 4 arms how even his species, designed for multiple weapons, could only use them in coordinated patterns. All 4 arms moved together like parts of a greater whole. The display showed mathematical models proving why independent dual wielding was impossible. "Some of you may be thinking you can prove this wrong," said, his multiple eyes scanning the classroom. "I encourage you to try during practice sessions. Every generation, we have cadets who believe they will be the exception. None have succeeded. Consider it a valuable lesson in accepting biological limitations." The class ended an hour later. Cadets filed out of the room in groups, speaking in dozens of different languages that were automatically translated by the neural implants all Academy students received. Walked slowly, her mind elsewhere. Caught up to her in the hallway. "That was interesting," he said in Korean, preferring their native language when no translation was needed. "I never thought about dual wielding before. Did you?" Nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "Actually, I did it a lot when I was younger, training with my family." Looked surprised. "Really? But the instructor said it was impossible." "He said no species could do it," corrected quietly. "But maybe he has not tested humans yet." They walked together toward the dormitory section. The station that housed the academy was huge, a massive ring rotating in space to create artificial gravity. Through the transparent walls, could see stars streaking by as the station turned. That evening, alone in her quarters, opened her personal storage locker. Inside were 2 swords her father had given her before she left Earth. They were not practice weapons. They were real blades, made of folded steel using techniques passed down through her family. One had belonged to her grandmother. The other had been her grandfather's. She took them out carefully and held one in each hand. The weight felt familiar, comfortable. She moved through a basic pattern, her left hand moving high while her right moved low. Then she switched, her right blocking an imaginary attack while her left struck out. The movements were different, independent, but they worked together. Stood still, both swords held ready, and wondered. Master had said no species could dual wield. He had 10,000 years of data. He had tested hundreds of species. He was probably right. But he had never tested a human before. She put the swords back carefully and closed the locker. Tomorrow there would be practical training sessions. Maybe then she would know for certain. Maybe the instructor was right, and her childhood training had been nothing more than synchronized movements that felt independent. Or maybe, just maybe, humans were different. Lay down on her bunk and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the galaxy turned, full of species that had been exploring the stars for thousands of years while humans were still learning to make fire. They knew so much. They had seen so much. But perhaps there were still things they had not seen. Perhaps there were still words that needed redefining. She closed her eyes and slept, dreaming of 2 swords moving like 2 minds that shared one purpose. 3 weeks passed since the lecture about dual wielding. Had been training hard with her assigned combat instructor, a warrior named who specialized in single-blade techniques. Every day she practiced forms and strikes, always with one weapon. The sword they gave her was good, well-balanced and sharp, but something felt wrong. She felt incomplete, like she was trying to write with only her right hand when she knew her left hand could help. The training hall was busy this morning. Dozens of cadets from different species practiced their combat skills in designated areas. The floor was made of a strange material that absorbed impacts, allowing full-force strikes without damaging the station. High above, observation platforms held instructors and advanced students watching the training sessions. Finished her morning drills and sat down on a bench to rest. Dropped down beside her, breathing hard. He had been practicing with throwing weapons, another human specialty that the instructors found interesting. Humans, it turned out, had very good hand-eye coordination compared to many species. "Practical exam is tomorrow," said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Are you ready?" Nodded, though she felt uncertain. "I think so. Says my technique is good, but it feels strange only using one sword." Before could respond, a loud voice interrupted them. The humans looked tired already. The Thane cadet stood nearby with several of his friends. His green scales seemed to shine with moisture from his own training. "Perhaps you should return to your little planet. Combat is for warrior species, not newcomers who get tired after an hour." Stood up slowly. She had learned in her 3 weeks here that liked to insult the human cadets. Most species at the academy were welcoming and curious about humans, but seemed to think Earth species did not belong here. She usually ignored him, but today something made her respond. "We are warrior species," she said calmly. "Just young ones. Your people have been fighting in space for 2,000 years. Give us time." Laughed, a hissing sound that his species made when amused. "Time? You need evolution, not time. You are weak, slow, and soft. I could defeat any human here with one hand." He looked around at the other cadets watching. "In fact, I challenge you right now. Let us see if humans can fight at all." Instructor appeared from across the training hall. His 4 eyes focused on the situation immediately. "Cadet, unsupervised challenges are against protocol." "Then supervise us," Instructor said with a respectful bow. "Make it a teaching moment. Show the humans what real combat looks like." His expression was hard to read, but after a moment he nodded. "Very well. Standard sparring rules. Practice weapons. First to 3 touches wins." He gestured to an empty sparring circle. "Combatants, take your positions." Walked to the circle, her heart beating faster. Around her, other cadets stopped their training to watch. Was bigger than her, stronger and faster. His species had natural advantages in combat, but she had been training hard and had taught her well. They each took a practice sword from the weapon rack. The blades were made of smart metal that would register touches without causing real injury. Held her sword in her right hand, settling into the stance had taught her. Held his weapon casually, as if this was barely worth his effort. "Begin," said. Moved fast, faster than expected. His blade came at her in a straight thrust aimed at her chest. She barely managed to deflect it, stepping to the side. He followed immediately with a horizontal slash. She blocked it, but the impact made her arms shake. He was very strong. They exchanged several more strikes. Defended well, but she could not find an opening to counterattack. Was too fast, too aggressive. He was also more experienced. She had been training in space combat for 3 weeks. He had been training his entire life. A low sweep caught her by surprise. The practice blade touched her leg. "One touch," announced. They reset. Was grinning now, showing his sharp teeth. "You defend well for a human, but defense alone never wins fights." The second exchange was shorter. Feinted high, then struck low. Fell for the trick. 2 touches. Felt frustration building in her chest. She was losing badly and everyone was watching. Was proving his point that humans did not belong here. She needed to do something different, something unexpected. Still sitting on the bench, must have seen her frustration. As they reset for the 3rd exchange, he suddenly stood up and called out to her. "Catch!" He tossed his practice sword across the training hall. His left hand moved without thinking. She caught the sword in midair, now holding 2 weapons. For a brief moment, everyone froze. She stood in the sparring circle with a blade in each hand, and suddenly everything felt right. Complete. Natural. "Wait," Instructor said, raising one arm. 2 weapons is not standard." But had already attacked, seeing an opportunity while seemed distracted. His blade came at her in a powerful overhead strike. What happened next would be discussed in the academy for years to come. His left hand moved up, catching his blade with a block. At the exact same moment, her right hand swept low, the practice sword touching his exposed side. But she did not stop there. As tried to pull back, surprised by the successful counter, her right hand rose to a guard position while her left hand struck out, touching his shoulder. The movements were completely different. Her hands moved independently, each one fighting its own battle while working toward the same goal. Her left blade spun in a defensive circle while her right blade struck forward in a thrust. When tried to knock away her right sword, her left was already coming from a different angle. It lasted only seconds. One of the Academy's top combat students found himself unable to defend or attack. Every time he blocked one blade, the other was already striking. His brain, trained for single-opponent combat, could not process two completely independent attack patterns coming from one person. His right blade touched his chest for the third point. The training hall was absolutely silent. Stepped back, his yellow eyes wide with confusion. What? How did you? Looked down at the two swords in her hands, equally surprised. It had felt natural, instinctive, like her body knew exactly what to do. Each hand had moved on its own, making its own decisions but working together perfectly. Instructor walked slowly into the sparring circle. His four eyes stared at, and his mouth was slightly open in an expression that might have been shock. "Do that again," he said quietly. "Do what?" asked. "That," said, gesturing at her swords. "The independent dual wielding. Show me again." Looked at, who nodded slowly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. They took positions again. This time was defensive, cautious. Attacked, and again her hands moved independently. Left blade high, right blade low. Right blade attacking, left blade defending. One sword creating an opening, the other exploiting it instantly. 30 seconds later, yielded, stepping out of the circle. The training hall erupted in noise. Cadets from a dozen species were talking at once, pointing at, arguing about what they had just seen. Some seemed excited. Others looked disturbed, as if they had witnessed something that should not be possible. Above them, on the observation platform, Master appeared. He must have been watching on monitors and come immediately. His four arms gripped the railing tightly as he stared down at the training hall floor. "Everyone stop," he commanded, and his voice carried enough authority that the entire hall fell silent immediately. He descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, until he stood before. "Cadet," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "where did you learn that technique?" "I did not learn it," Master Instructor said honestly. "I just did it. My family practiced with two swords when I was young. It always felt natural." His multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "Natural," he repeated softly. Then louder, "In 10,000 years of records across 700 documented species, true independent dual wielding has never been achieved. Not once. Not ever." He turned to address the entire training hall. "What we have just witnessed is either an impossible anomaly or—" he paused, as if afraid to say the words, "or we have been wrong about a fundamental principle of combat biology." He turned back to, "I need to test this properly. Cadet, you will face me. Right now. I must see if this is real or if I am somehow mistaken about what I observed." Felt her stomach tighten. Master was legendary, one of the greatest warriors in the galaxy. But she nodded and took her position in the circle, both practice swords held ready. Picked up a practice blade and stepped into the circle. His three other arms hung at his sides, ready but not armed. "Come," he said simply. Attacked, and for the first time in her life, she fought without holding back any part of herself. Both hands worked together but independently, creating patterns that no single opponent could predict or counter. Defended brilliantly, his experience and skill obvious, but she could see confusion in his movements. He was fighting an enemy he had never encountered before, using techniques that should not exist. The duel lasted 30 seconds. His left blade caught his weapon and held it while her right blade moved to his neck in a strike that would have been fatal in real combat. Master stood perfectly still, the practice blade touching his throat. Then, very slowly, he smiled. It was an expression humans had never seen on a face before. "Impossible," he whispered. "Absolutely impossible, and yet here it is." He stepped back and raised all four of his arms high. "Attention, all cadets and instructors. Today, something unprecedented has occurred. Today, we have witnessed the impossible become possible. Today, everything we thought we knew about combat has changed." He looked at with what might have been respect or might have been fear. "The humans can dual wield. And if the humans can do it, we must discover how, and why, and what this means for everything we thought we understood about combat across the galaxy." The Neurological Institute occupied an entire section of Station Nexus 7. Had never been to this part of the Academy before. The corridors here were quieter, filled with scientists instead of warriors. Through transparent walls, she could see laboratories where researchers from dozens of species studied everything from alien biology to combat medicine. Dr. Park met at the entrance. She was a human who had been working at the Academy for 2 years, one of the first Earth scientists accepted into the galactic scientific community. She was small, with short black hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to notice everything. Doctor said, shaking her hand in the human way, "You have made my job very interesting this week. Every species in the galaxy wants to know how you did what you did." "I am not special," said quietly. "I just picked up 2 swords." Doctor smiled. "That is exactly what makes this fascinating. You think it is normal, come with me. We have many tests to run." The testing took 3 full days. Underwent brain scans using technology far beyond anything on Earth. She performed combat simulations while machines measured her neural activity. She answered endless questions about her childhood, her training, her family history. Scientists from a dozen species observed and took notes, speaking in languages that the translation implants struggled to keep up with. On the 3rd day, Doctor called a meeting. The conference room was packed with instructors, scientists, and senior academy officials. Master sat in the front row, his 4 eyes fixed on the display screen, sat to the side, feeling uncomfortable with all the attention. Doctor began her presentation. "We have discovered something remarkable about human neurology," she said. The screen showed a 3-dimensional image of a human brain next to images of thane and brains. "The key lies in a structure called the corpus. This is the bridge of nerve fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres of the brain." She highlighted the structure in each brain image. In most species, the corpus primarily serves to synchronize the hemispheres, making them work as one unified processing unit. This is efficient for most tasks, but humans develop differently. The human brain image expanded, showing complex networks of connections. Humans have an unusually thick corpus with specialized fiber types that allow for something unique. Our brain hemispheres can communicate with each other while simultaneously operating independently. We can literally think 2 different thoughts at the same time while coordinating them toward a single goal. A scientist raised one of her limbs. "But why would this evolve? What advantage does it provide?" Doctor nodded, expecting the question. "Humans evolved as tool users with complex social structures. We needed to manipulate tools with precision while also monitoring our environment for threats. We needed to communicate with language while simultaneously reading body language and social cues. Our brain developed the ability to split attention and process multiple independent streams of information." She brought up another image. "This is brain activity while dual wielding." The scan showed both hemispheres lighting up in complex, different patterns. Her left hemisphere is controlling her right hand's sword work. Her right hemisphere is controlling her left hand's sword work. But both hemispheres are constantly communicating, sharing information about the opponent and coordinating strategy. It is like having 2 fighters working together, but they share one mind. Master spoke for the first time. "We tested this with other species. My people have 4 arms. Surely we could learn this technique with training." Doctor shook her head gently. We tested Thane and volunteers. Your brain structures are different. When you try to move your limbs independently, your brain literally cannot process it without intensive concentration. For humans, it happens naturally. We have been using this capability our entire evolutionary history. We just never applied it to sword fighting before. So all humans can do this? Another instructor asked. Not all, but most can learn, Doctor answered. We tested the 12 other human cadets at the academy. 8 of them could dual wield effectively within a week. 2 more showed potential with more training. Only 2 seemed unable to develop the skill, and we think that is due to individual variation, not species limitation. She pulled up video recordings. They showed practicing with 2 swords, his movements improving rapidly over several days. Another video showed a female cadet from Korea who had picked up the technique almost as fast as. Then Minyu, a cadet who struggled at first but slowly developed the coordination needed. The room erupted in discussion. Scientists argued about the implications. Instructors debated how to integrate this into training. Some seemed excited by the discovery. Others appeared worried. A senior official from the Galactic Military Council stood up. He was a Thane, older and covered in scars from decades of service. This gives humans a significant military advantage, he said bluntly. In personal combat, a human dual wielder would defeat most single-weapon fighters of equal skill. If Earth trains their soldiers in this technique, they could dominate close-quarters combat across the galaxy. The room went quiet. It was true, and everyone knew it. Warfare in the galaxy was complex, involving ships and weapons far beyond what Earth currently possessed. But in ground combat and boarding actions, in any situation where soldiers fought face-to-face, humans would have an advantage that no other species could match. Perhaps humans should be restricted from using this technique in official competitions, an instructor suggested, to maintain fairness. Master stood up, all 4 of his arms raised for attention. No, he said firmly. We do not restrict species from using their natural advantages. They are stronger than most species. The Thane are faster. They have 4 arms. We do not ban these advantages. We adapt to them. He turned to look at. Cadet did not cheat. She did not break rules. She simply used an ability her species naturally possesses. If this makes other species uncomfortable, that is not her problem. It is ours. The meeting continued for another hour, but the conclusion was clear. Humans could dual wield. It was real. It was natural to them, and the galaxy would have to accept it. That evening, received a communication from Earth. Her father's face appeared on the screen, and she could see her brother and her mother in the background. Her father said, smiling proudly, "The whole planet is talking about you. You are on every news feed. They say you proved humans are special." Felt tears in her eyes. "I miss you all, and Father. When I dual wield, I use the techniques you taught me, the patterns from our family training. I wanted you to know that." Her father's smile grew wider. "Your grandfather would be very proud. He could dual wield too, you know. So could his father. We always thought it was just our family tradition. We never knew it was something about being human." Pushed closer to the camera. "Little sister, you have to teach me everything when you come home. I have been practicing with 2 swords every day since I saw the videos." They talked for an hour, sharing stories and laughter. When the call ended, felt both happy and homesick. She had come to the stars to learn from the galaxy's greatest warriors. She had not expected to teach them something instead. The next day, news spread beyond the academy. The galactic communication networks carried the story to every corner of known space. Humans, the species in the galactic community, had an ability that no other species possessed. Reactions varied wildly. Some species were fascinated. Scientists requested permission to visit Earth and study human biology. Others wanted to know if they could learn the technique through genetic modification or neural implants. The answer was no. It was not something that could be. It was part of what made humans unique. Other species were threatened. The Thane Empire, always proud of their warrior culture, felt insulted that newcomers had shown them up. Military councils across the galaxy began revising combat training to account for potential human opponents. Some politicians called for restrictions on human military expansion. They took it as a personal challenge. For 3,000 years, they had dominated galactic combat tournaments. Their warriors were legendary. The idea that humans might defeat them in single combat was unacceptable. 5 days after the demonstration, an official message arrived at the Academy from the Master read it aloud to in his office. The issue formal challenge to the human cadet, single combat, prime arena. If the human wins, we will acknowledge dual wielding as legitimate. If she loses, humans will admit this was luck, not skill, and will cease dual wielding in official combat. Felt her stomach drop. They want me to fight their champion. Not just any champion, said grimly. Undefeated in 200 duels. He has killed 17 opponents in death matches and defeated hundreds more in sport combat. He is, without exaggeration, one of the 5 deadliest warriors in the known galaxy. And if I refuse? Sighed, then the question remains unanswered. Some will always believe it was a trick or luck. Humans will never be fully accepted as a warrior species. Your people's reputation will suffer. Looked out the window at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, a small blue world full of people who were watching her now. She thought about her grandfather, who had taught her father to fight with honor. She thought about all the humans who would come to the academy after her, who would face prejudice and doubt because of what she did or did not do now. When is the fight? She asked. 3 months, answered. They give you time to prepare. It is considered honorable among their culture. Nodded slowly. Then I will fight, not because I want to prove humans are better than other species, but because someone has to show that impossible is just a word. Someone has to prove that the galaxy still has new things to learn. Studied her with all 4 eyes. Then he smiled, that same strange expression he had shown after their duel. Then we have much work to do, cadet. If you are going to face, you will need to become better than you ever thought possible. I have 3 months, said. Yes, agreed. 3 months to master what your species has never formally studied. 3 months to prepare for an opponent who has trained for 300 years. 3 months to do the impossible. He stood up and placed one hand on her shoulder in a gesture of respect. Fortunately, cadet, you have already proven that impossible is something humans do quite well. The first week of training nearly broke. Master did not treat her like a cadet anymore. He treated her like a warrior preparing for war. Every morning began at dawn station time, with 3 hours of physical conditioning that left her muscles screaming. Then came technique drills, practicing the same movements hundreds of times until they became automatic. Then sparring against opponents of increasing skill until she could barely lift her arms. You have natural talent, told her one evening as she collapsed on the training mat, gasping for air, but has experience. He has fought in real battles where defeat meant death. He has studied combat for 3 centuries. Your talent will not be enough. Wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She just nodded and tried to breathe. Helped her back to her quarters that night. He is pushing you too hard, he said with concern. You need rest. I need to get better, replied. Will not go easy on me because I am tired. The second week brought reinforcements. Dr. Park arrived with a team of specialists from Earth. They brought data, video recordings, and knowledge that humans had been gathering for thousands of years. Fighting techniques that Earth's warriors had developed independently, never knowing that other species could not do the same things. We found historical records, Doctor explained, setting up a portable display in the training hall. There was a Japanese swordsman named who lived almost 500 years ago. He developed a fighting style using 2 swords called kai. He was considered nearly unbeatable. The display showed old drawings and paintings of a man holding two swords in different positions. Studied the images carefully. The techniques looked similar to what she had been doing instinctively, but more refined, more deliberate. There were others too, Doctor continued. European fighters who used rapier and dagger together, Filipino warriors who fought with two sticks or blades in a style called, Korean sword masters from your own country's history. Humans have been dual-wielding for thousands of years. We just did not know it was special. Master examined the historical records with great interest. Remarkable, he muttered. Your species developed these techniques naturally, never realizing you were doing something impossible. He looked at. We will study all of these styles. We will take the best parts of each and create something new, something designed specifically for fighting against single-weapon opponents. The training intensified. Learned techniques from across human history, adapted and improved by Master's deep understanding of combat theory. She practiced against combat drones programmed with fighting patterns. She studied videos of previous fights, learning his preferences, his habits, his strategies. And Minyu joined the training sessions, having been given special permission to help prepare. They took turns sparring with her, pushing her to adapt and improve. Was fast and technical, forcing to sharpen her precision. Minyu was strong and aggressive, teaching her how to defend against power attacks. Even appeared one day, asking permission to join the training. I want to help, the Thane cadet said simply. You defeated me, but you did it with honor. Now you represent not just humans, but everyone who has ever been told they cannot do something. I wish to see you succeed. Brought knowledge of psychology and culture. They respect strength and directness, he explained. We'll test you early, trying to intimidate you with powerful attacks. If you show fear or hesitation, he will press that advantage relentlessly. You must meet his aggression with confidence. The third month arrived faster than expected. Her skills had improved dramatically. She could now execute complex dual-wielding techniques that would have been impossible 3 months earlier. Her blades moved like extensions of her arms, each one following independent patterns while working toward common goals. But she still had doubts. Late at night, alone in her quarters, she would practice the forms and wonder if it would be enough. Was legendary. She was a cadet who had been training in space combat for less than 4 months. The logical part of her brain said she had no chance. 1 week before the tournament, a transport ship arrived from Earth carrying unexpected visitors. Father, brother, and a group of martial arts masters from Korea stepped off the ship. They had traveled across space to be with her for the final week of preparation. Her father embraced her tightly. We could not let you face this alone, he said. Your fight is not just yours. It represents our family, our traditions, and our world. The Korean martial arts masters worked with every day that final week. They taught her techniques that had been passed down through generations, refined methods of breathing and mental focus that would help her stay calm under pressure. Her brother sparred with her like they had as children, reminding her of where she came from. You always defeated me when we were young, said after one practice session. I used to get frustrated because you made it look so easy. Now I understand. You were not better because you practiced more. You were better because you could do something I could not. The night before they left for Prime, Master called to his office. He looked tired, as if the preparation had been as exhausting for him as for her. I have taught hundreds of students, he said quietly. Many became great warriors, but I have never prepared someone for something like this. Tomorrow, you will walk into an arena on an alien world and fight a battle that will be watched by trillions across the galaxy. The pressure will be immense. I know, said. Stood and walked to the window looking out at the stars. When I first saw you dual wield, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt wonder. I realized that for all our knowledge, for all our centuries of study, the galaxy can still surprise us. He turned back to her. Whatever happens tomorrow, you have already changed how we think about combat. You have already proven that assumptions should be questioned. That is worth more than any victory. But I still want to win, said honestly. Smiled, good, because I did not spend 3 months training you to lose. The journey to Prime took 2 days. The ship carried her family, her friends from the academy, and dozens of officials and reporters. News of the challenge had spread across the entire galaxy. Betting markets were active on hundreds of worlds, most bets favored by overwhelming margins. Prime appeared in a massive fortress world covered in training facilities and military installations. They had built their entire civilization around the concept of strength through combat. Their cities were arenas. Their government was led by warriors. This was their home territory and was walking into it alone. The shuttle landed in a military spaceport. Soldiers lined the path, their armor gleaming in the harsh sunlight. They watched with multifaceted eyes, their expressions unreadable. She walked between them with her head held high, refusing to show any fear. The arena itself was enormous, a coliseum that could hold 100,000 spectators. The stands were already filling with citizens and visitors from across the galaxy. Cameras from every major news network were positioned around the arena floor. This fight would be broadcast live to billions of viewers. Was taken to a preparation room beneath the arena. Her father helped her put on her armor, a lightweight combat suit designed to protect without restricting movement. She strapped her 2 swords to her back, the weight familiar and comforting. And Minu stood nearby, trying to hide their nervousness. Master paced the small room, reviewing strategy one final time. Doctor checked medical equipment just in case. A official entered the room. The fight begins in 10 minutes, he announced in a translated voice. Is ready? Is the human ready? Everyone turned to look at. She took a deep breath and nodded. I am ready. Her father placed both hands on her shoulders. Remember what grandfather always said. 2 swords, 1 heart. Trust yourself. Hugged her tightly. Show them what humans can do. Master walked with her to the entrance tunnel. The roar of the crowd echoed down the passage, growing louder with each step. One last piece of advice, he said. Will try to overwhelm you early. He will use his size and reach to keep you at distance. Do not let him control the pace. Be patient. Wait for your moment. Nodded, her mouth too dry to speak. They reached the entrance. Light streamed in from the arena beyond. The noise was deafening, 100,000 voices cheering and chanting. Could hear her name being called, though whether in support or mockery she could not tell. Go, said, and remember, you have already done the impossible once. You can do it again. Stepped out into the light. The arena floor was covered in sand, traditional for combat. The sun beat down from above, hot and harsh. All around her, the stands were packed with spectators. Cameras floated in the air, recording every angle. On the opposite side of the arena, another figure emerged from a tunnel. Was massive, even for his chitinous armor was from countless battles. He carried a war glaive that was taller than, a weapon designed to keep enemies at distance and strike with devastating power. They walked toward the center of the arena. The crowd's noise faded to expectant silence. Stopped 10 paces away and studied her with compound eyes that reflected her image 1,000 times. You are small, he said, his voice amplified across the arena. Are all humans so small? Small enough to move quickly, replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Big enough to fight. Made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. I have killed warriors 3 times your size, little human. I have defeated champions from 40 different species. You are brave to face me, but bravery will not save you. Drew her 2 swords, the blades singing as they left their sheaths. My instructor said no species can dual wield, she said clearly, making sure her voice carried to the crowd. I proved him wrong. You say I cannot defeat you. Perhaps you will be wrong too. Raised his war glaive in salute. Then let us find out what is possible and what is not. Let us redefine the word cannot. A referee stepped forward, raising one arm high. Combat begins. Now. The first strike came faster than expected. Swarglaive swept toward her in a horizontal arc that would have cut her in half if it connected. She dropped low, feeling the blade pass over her head close enough to disturb her hair. Sand kicked up around her as she rolled to the side. Followed immediately with a downward thrust. Crossed both her swords above her head, catching the glaive between them. The impact drove her to one knee. That was incredibly strong, much stronger than any opponent she had faced before. He pushed down, trying to force her weapons aside, and for a moment thought her arms would break from the pressure. She twisted both blades in opposite directions, redirecting his weapon to the side rather than blocking it directly. The glaive buried itself in the sand and rolled away, coming up to her feet. First lesson learned. She could not match his strength. She would have to use speed and technique. The crowd roared as the fighters circled each other, pulled his weapon free and advanced steadily. He was patient, not rushing. 300 years of experience taught him not to make mistakes against unknown opponents. Watched his movements carefully. The warglaive had incredible reach, keeping her at a distance where her shorter swords were useless. She would need to get inside his guard, but every time she tried to close the distance, the glaive was there, forcing her back. Struck again, this time a series of rapid attacks. High, low, side, thrust. Each strike was perfectly placed, giving no time to counter. She defended desperately, both blades moving in constant motion to deflect or dodge. One strike got through, the glaive's edge cutting across her armored shoulder. It did not penetrate, but the impact sent her stumbling. First blood, announced. The crowd cheered wildly. You defend well, human, better than I expected, but defense alone never wins. Steadied herself, breathing hard. Her shoulder throbbed where the glaive had hit. She could feel eyes watching her from every direction. Her father in the stands, her friends. Master, billions of people across the galaxy, all wondering if the human would fail as everyone predicted. Attacked again, even more aggressively. He was trying to end this quickly now, pressing his advantage. His glaive became a whirlwind of death, striking from multiple angles with speed that seemed impossible for such a large warrior. Gave ground, step by step, defending but unable to attack. She was losing. Everyone could see it. The betting odds were updating in real time on displays around the arena. 98% favored now. The fight seemed almost over. Then remembered something Master had told her during training. When an opponent thinks they are winning, they become predictable. They repeat what works instead of adapting to what might work better. She watched pattern. The glaive swept left, then thrust, then swept right. Left, thrust, right. He was repeating the combination because it was working. She was blocking the left sweep with her right sword, dodging the thrust and blocking the right sweep with her left sword. The pattern was forcing her backward, but it was predictable. Swept left again. Instead of blocking with her right sword, dropped flat to the sand. The glaive passed over her. Before could adjust, she was rolling forward, under his weapon's arc, moving inside his reach for the first time in the fight. Her left sword struck his leg joint where the armor had a seam. Her right sword came up toward his chest, jumped back, surprised but not fast enough. Both strikes connected, leaving marks on his armor. The crowd gasped. It was the first time the human had successfully attacked. Looked down at the marks on his armor, then at his compound eyes showed something that might have been respect. Clever, he said. You waited for a pattern. You use your brain, not just your body. Perhaps you are a true warrior after all. He changed his approach. No more patterns. No more predictable combinations. Each attack was different, forcing to react instinctively rather than anticipate. The glaive came from angles that should have been impossible, using his long reach to strike from positions where she could not counter. But was adapting too. She started using her dual blades in ways she had not tried before. One sword would engage the glaive while the other created a threat that had to acknowledge. When he defended against her right blade, her left was already attacking. When he focused on her left, her right found an opening. The fight changed from one-sided domination to a genuine contest. Would attack and would defend and counter. She would create an opening, and he would turn it against her with his experience. They moved across the arena floor, neither able to gain a decisive advantage. Minutes passed. Both fighters were breathing harder now, had underestimated the human stamina. She should have been exhausted by now, but she kept fighting with the same speed and precision. In turn, was amazed by this endurance. He was centuries old, yet he fought with the energy of someone in their prime. "You are good, human," said between exchanges. "Better than I expected, but I have fought for 300 years. I have seen every technique, every strategy. You cannot surprise me with something I have not encountered before." His eyes narrowed. That was not quite true. Had never fought a dual wielder before. No one in the galaxy had, except for the few people she had sparred with at the academy. He was adapting well, but he was still thinking like someone facing a single opponent. She needed to make him understand that he was not fighting one person. He was fighting two hands that could think independently. Attacked with a new pattern. Her right blade struck high, a clear threat to his head. Raised his glaive to block, a perfect defense. But her left blade was not following up the attack. It was moving in completely different timing, coming from a different angle with different intent. The left blade struck his exposed side while his glaive was still raised to block the right blade. Grunted in pain and surprise. Before he could recover, his right blade transitioned from attack to defense while her left blade pressed the advantage, striking twice more before he could reset his guard. The crowd fell silent. They had just seen something that should not be possible. One warrior executing two completely independent attack sequences simultaneously. It was like fighting two opponents who shared perfect coordination. Stepped back, reassessing. A dark fluid leaked from the joint where his blade had penetrated. The wound was not serious, but it was real. The human had hurt him. "I begin to understand," said slowly. "You do not fight as one warrior with two weapons. You fight as two warriors who share one body. This is what the instructor said was impossible." "It was impossible," replied, both swords held ready, "until it was not." Nodded, a gesture that crossed species barriers. "Then I will show you something that seems impossible too. I will show you why I am undefeated in 200 duels." He attacked with a ferocity that made his previous efforts look like warm-up exercises. The warglaive became a blur, moving so fast it seemed to be in multiple places at once. Was no longer holding back, no longer testing her. He was fighting with the full skill of 3 centuries of combat experience. Defended desperately. Both her blades moved in constant motion, blocking, deflecting, dodging, but it was not enough. Strikes were coming too fast, too powerful. One got through, hitting her armored leg. Another struck her side. A third caught her left arm, making her fingers go numb. She was losing again. The brief moment of advantage had passed, was simply too skilled, too experienced. Her left blade almost slipped from her numbed fingers. In the stands, her father stood up, unable to watch. Gripped the railing, his knuckles white. Master's 4 eyes tracked every movement, analyzing, calculating. And Minyu held hands, hopping for a miracle. His left arm hung useless at her side. She could barely feel her fingers. She tried to switch the sword to her right hand, but pressed his attack, giving her no time. One sword against his glaive. This was what he had wanted all along, to reduce her to a single-weapon fighter where his advantages would dominate. Then remembered her grandfather's words, 2 swords, 1 heart. It was not about the weapons. It was never about the weapons. It was about the mind that controlled them. She did not need her left hand to work. She needed her left mind to work. She let the sword fall from her numbed left hand, saw it and smiled, moving in for what he thought would be the final attack. But his left brain hemisphere was still active, still processing, still fighting. While her right hand wielded her remaining sword in obvious attack patterns, her left mind was analyzing his movements, predicting his patterns, finding the openings. Her right hand blocked his glaive. At that exact moment, her left hand, still mostly numb, closed on the second sword lying in the sand where she had dropped it. There was no strength in the grip, but there was timing. There was precision. There was the moment of surprise when thought he had reduced her to his level. The left blade, held in a weak grip that should not have been able to hurt anyone, moved with perfect timing into the one space had left unguarded while focusing on her right sword. It touched his throat, the point resting against his scales with just enough pressure to make its point clear. In a real fight, it would have been a killing blow. The arena fell completely silent. Stood perfectly still, his glaive raised for a strike that would never fall. His eyes looked down at the sword touching his throat. Then they moved to look its face. "How?" he asked quietly. "Two swords, one heart," said, her voice shaking from exhaustion. "My left hand could barely hold the blade, but my left mind knew exactly where to put it." Slowly lowered his glaive. He stepped back, and sword fell from her numbed fingers to the sand. The raised all four of his arms high in the traditional gesture of respect. "I yield," he announced, his voice carrying across the silent arena. "The human has defeated me fairly. I declare this challenge complete." For 3 seconds nothing happened. Then the arena erupted. The sound was deafening, 100,000 voices shouting at once. Some were cheering, some were arguing, some were simply shocked into making noise. His legs gave out and she collapsed to her knees in the sand. Her entire body was shaking. She had won. Somehow, impossibly, she had won. Walked over and offered her a hand. She took it, and he pulled her to her feet with surprising gentleness. "I did not lose to a trick," he said, making sure his words were picked up by the arena's audio systems. "I did not lose to luck. I lost to something genuinely new. I lost to evolution." He turned to address the crowd. "Let it be known across the galaxy. Humans can dual wield. It is real. It is legitimate. Any who doubt this are welcome to face me, and I will demonstrate my loss again to convince them." The crowd's reaction was mixed, but they in their special booth were nodding. Honor meant everything to their culture and had spoken clearly. The challenge was complete. Humans had proven their ability. His father reached her first, pushing through the crowd of officials and reporters. He embraced her tightly, tears running down his face. Was right behind him, laughing and crying at the same time. Master arrived with medical supplies, checking her injuries with professional efficiency. Doctor was already updating the galaxy's scientific databases, officially recording that humans could independently dual wield. The discovery would be taught in every academy from now on. Combat theory had been permanently changed. In the preparation room beneath the arena, after the crowd had dispersed and the cameras had stopped recording, came to visit. He found with her arm in a medical brace, surrounded by her friends and family. "I wanted to tell you something private," they said, "away from cameras and politics." He sat down carefully, his large frame making the human-sized chair look tiny. "You asked me during the fight how you could defeat someone with 300 years of experience. The answer is simple. Experience teaches us what has worked before. But you were doing something that had never worked before because no one could do it. My experience was useless against something genuinely new." "You still almost won," said honestly. "If you had not been honorable, if you had continued attacking when I dropped my sword." "Then I would have won a fight but lost something more important," interrupted. "I would have lost the chance to learn. You taught me today that the universe still has surprises, that even old warriors can see something they have never seen before." He stood up. "Thank you for that lesson. It was worth more than a victory." 3 days later, stood before the Galactic Council on Station Nexus 7. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the chamber. She had been asked to make a statement about her victory and its implications for humanity's place in the galaxy. She was nervous, but her father's hand on her shoulder gave her strength. She stepped up to the speaker's platform and looked out at the assembled representatives. "Honored members of the council," she began, "I did not come to your academy to prove humans were special. I came to learn from species who had been exploring the stars for thousands of years while my people were still discovering fire. I came as a student." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But I learned something unexpected. I learned that the galaxy, for all its age and wisdom, can still be surprised. I learned that just because something has never been seen does not mean it is impossible. I learned that the word cannot is not a wall. It is a challenge." She held up both her hands. "My species can dual wield because of how we evolved, but evolution did not stop when we reached the stars. We are all still evolving, still adapting, still learning what we might become. Maybe someday, other species will find their own impossible abilities. Maybe you already have them but never thought to look." She looked directly at Master in the audience. "My instructor said no species can dual wield. He was right based on all the evidence he had. I proved him wrong not with arguments but with action. He did not become angry. He became curious. He helped me improve. He taught me that wisdom is not about being right. It is about being willing to learn when you are wrong." The council chamber was silent, every representative listening carefully. "Humans are new to the galaxy," concluded. "We have much to learn from all of you, but perhaps, sometimes, we have things to teach as well. Not because we are better, but because we are different. And different is not a weakness. It is a possibility." She bowed in the traditional human way and stepped back from the platform. The chamber erupted in discussion, but did not stay to listen. She had said what needed to be said. That evening she returned to the training hall at the academy. It was late, and the hall was empty except for one figure. Master stood in the center, holding a practice sword in each of his 4 hands. "I have been trying," he said when he saw her. "For 3 days I have been practicing dual wielding, independent movements. It is difficult, perhaps impossible for my species." "Perhaps," agreed, walking over to stand beside him. "Or perhaps you just need more time. 3 days is not much compared to 3 months, and 3 months is not much compared to a lifetime." Lowered his weapons. "You have changed everything, cadet, or should I say instructor. The council has approved your promotion. You are now an official combat instructor at this academy, the youngest in its history." Felt surprise and pride in equal measure. "I am honored." "You have earned it," said. "You will teach humans and any other species willing to learn about dual wielding and the philosophy behind it. You will help us understand not just the technique, but the mindset that makes it possible." He extended one hand in the human gesture of shaking. "Welcome to the academy staff, instructor. I look forward to learning from you." Shook his hand, smiling. 6 months ago, she had been a cadet arriving from Earth, nervous and uncertain. Now she stood in the training hall as an instructor, ready to teach the galaxy something new. The stars outside the station windows seemed to shine brighter. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its slow orbit around its sun. Her family would return home soon, carrying stories of her victory. Children would hear about the girl who picked up 2 swords and redefined what humans could do. But knew the truth. She had not done anything special. She had simply refused to accept that something was impossible without trying it first. She had questioned assumptions, tested boundaries, and discovered that the word cannot was not as solid as everyone believed. And if one person could change how the galaxy thought about dual wielding, what else might be possible? What other, impossible, things were waiting to be discovered? What other assumptions needed questioning? Looked at the 2 practice swords lying on the training mat. Tomorrow, she would teach her first class. She would face cadets from species across the galaxy and show them that impossible was just a word. A word that could be redefined. A word that should be challenged. A word that humans, in their brief time among the stars, had already proven could be changed from absolute truth to yesterday's misconception. She picked up both swords, one in each hand, and began her evening practice. The movements were familiar now, natural, as easy as breathing. Two swords moving independently but working together. Two minds sharing one purpose. Two possibilities combining into one reality. The instructor had said no species could dual wield. She had picked up two swords and asked a simple question: define cannot. The galaxy was still working on the answer.